we're going to have Algorand on, specifically Steve Kokinos from Algorand is going to give video presentation, and then we'll bring him on for Q&A.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Kokinos. I'm excited to be here. I'm part of Masari Mainnet, and really appreciate you having me. I'm the CEO of Algorand, and just to give you a little bit of background on the project, Algorand was developed by Silvio Micali. Silvio is an MIT professor and Turing Prize winner, and really by all accounts, one of the co-founders of modern cryptography. What he found with Bitcoin and proof of work was a really fascinating and innovative use of cryptography, but felt that if we're really going to scale to have digital assets be used by kind of everyone in the world, that ultimately there was needed to be a new set of technology from the ground up that was scalable, secure, and decentralized. And that's really what Algorand represents. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the benefits of the protocol and in a little bit. Now, Algorand's approach to blockchain brings some compelling benefits. One is, as a proof of stake network, pure proof of stake, which is our particular version, there's minimal computation required. The second is it's a secure network that operates at very high speed and scale. Transactions take around 4 seconds. We have high scale in terms of the amount of transactional throughput. Also importantly, every transaction is immediately final upon confirmation. And we've built a series of layer 1 tools that enable people to take advantage of the protocol, build smart contracts, issue assets, and do that through a series of easy to use templates and SDKs that really enable people to develop without a lot of pre-existing blockchain experience or knowledge. And we think that's really important in terms of bringing new people into the blockchain and crypto space. Another important thing to note is that Algorand is a public, permissionless blockchain, open to anyone, and our research team has also released some of their thinking around the need for private permission chains, and that architecture is called co-chains, and uses some of the science that Silvio is a co-inventor of, things like zero knowledge proofs and verifiable random functions that the underlying protocol uses as well. So definitely in a unique place to be able to continue the innovation that started with the core protocol itself. In terms of where the project is, Algorand launched last summer and has completed over 5 upgrades on the mainnet. We've had 0 availability impact and 100% uptime. And one of, I think, the core beliefs at Algorand is that protocols need to evolve over time. And we've shown that we're able to do that and do it on, I think, a pretty consistent cadence. And it's led to a whole series of innovation and new releases. One is atomic transfers, the ability to exchange both one-on-one and multi-party, multi-asset exchanges in a single transaction. The second is our ASA framework, which is Algorand standard assets, enabling people to create any form of digital asset that they choose with a high degree of flexibility, also in layer 1. And then Algorand smart contracts in layer 1. And all of these things benefit from the underlying security and scalability of the protocol and operate in kind of the time of a single transaction. So there's really no overhead to using those tools from a user standpoint. And seeing significant adoption kind of across those, really from across the spectrum, from decentralized finance, more traditional payments and banking, and also central bank digital currency. So I think we're really excited by some of the use cases and some of the projects that are starting to use the layer 1 tools that we've built for the community. And I think if digging into some of the use cases a little bit more, I think what we've seen is not only different types of financial transactions, but across different industries, from environmental, insurance, finance, gaming, and beyond. But give a few particular examples of where we've seen interesting use cases. One is in traditional finance. We're starting to see real traction around tokenization of assets. Our partner Asset Block is a good example of that, tokenizing commercial real estate. Also interesting uses of digital assets. World Chess is doing a hybrid IPO on the London Stock Exchange, but then also offering a portion of their equity as a security token. Also projects like Stone Eyes helping with faster clearing and settlement, licensed e-money, of which Monerium is an example, and many more. So really excited to see some of the financial applications. In the decentralized finance world, we're seeing fascinating emerging applications there, and seeing new types of asset classes. Examples of that are both Republic and Props, who've announced migration to Algorand or launching there, and those represent Reg A security tokens. Seeing marketplaces for 5G bandwidth, stable coins such as Tether, or micro assets such as IBMR, and more. And so I think not only are these interesting cases, but also really driving financial inclusion, which is something that we think is very important. And that extends into the central bank world. We announced a couple of months ago that the Marshall Islands is putting the world's first national digital currency on Algorand, and really excited to continue to explore more in that front. And so, I think if we really look at where things are going, we expect to see more adoption in these areas. And since the network will continue to upgrade, we're looking forward to continuing to evolve the tech and continue to take the innovation of our research teams and continue to apply that in ways that are novel out in the market. And I think everyone can expect to continue to hear from Silvio and the research team as we start to evolve our thinking around how to drive the technology forward. In terms of the public network itself, the network has had no downtime, and performance has really continued to surpass even our own internal expectations. The ecosystem continues to grow, and we're seeing great strength there. Today we have over 300 ambassadors across 50 countries, and growing. Recently launched a new developer website, developer.algorand.org, and would really encourage anybody who's interested in that to check it out. It's very focused around tutorials, solutions, and articles across not only different programming languages, but different use cases. And the Algorand Foundation recently launched a 50 million USD grant program to further develop tools and encourage people to build on the platform. So really excited about that progress as well. And if you wanted to get involved in building on Algorand, there's lots of opportunities. So as you can see, we have lots going on at Algorand. Please come follow us on social media. Come visit our sites, developer.algorand.org and algorand.com, and look forward to seeing what you build.
I have a couple of questions here. So at the massive upgrade back in November,
Yep.
enabling smart contract functionality, what are some of the specific applications that are starting to be built, some of the use cases that you start to see that people are really starting to approach Algorand as opposed to maybe some other options that are out there?
Yeah, well, I think one that we've seen a lot of take up on is our stablecoins, either deploying or adding versions that are compatible with Algorand. Tether recently launched a version on the Algorand platform, which we're really excited about. In addition, we've had other stablecoins like MELD, which is a gold-backed stablecoin, and ARCC, which is IBMR's stablecoin, Asia Reserve Coin. So I think that's definitely a use case that we've seen pick up some traction. The other is we're starting to see an emergent kind of sets of DeFi applications starting to build. And I think one of the things that are both layer one tools and smart contract language make it really easy to do is create a variety of different financial applications. And one of the things we've done, which is a nod more toward traditional finance, is partner with ISDA, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. And we've been working on bringing their common domain model into Algorand as well. So, make it friendly both for people coming from more of the crypto world, but also people coming from more of a traditional world. And we think that interplay of different types of applications is going to be really interesting as things continue to mature.
Agree. And yeah, like you said, a lot of these applications are kind of geared towards crypto natives at the moment, but you're going to start to see that shift over to, how does this impact the traditional side of things? And I guess another question popped up on the staking side. Staking very popular right now, especially with how it's being adopted by various exchanges and staking providers. What is the advantage of using Algorand's proof of stake, either from a staking user perspective or on the security side compared to some of the other chains?
Yeah, so let me talk about the protocol, I think a little bit more so people understand. I think one of the, elements of most proof of stake protocols is that they're permissioned in some way. And I think Algorand was really the first truly public permissionless proof of stake platform. And because of the way the protocol works, it's inherently decentralized. In that, every additional user helps decentralize the network more. And because it's proof of stake, if you hold a token in Algorand gives you influence not only on who proposes the next block, but on future upgrades of the network. And so I think what we really look at are, the people who are involved, who are building, developing on the platform. I think there's real incentive for them to, hold tokens and be part of the network and help support it. And, the more people who are online and the more people who are participating, the better the security model works. So we think as it grows, those are all positive dynamics. It's also the case that as more users join the Algorand network, it doesn't negatively impact performance, which I think is somewhat unique in our case. There's a certain critical mass needed for the network to run, and then beyond that, it's really just enhancing security, but not changing the performance characteristics at all. So I think there's, from our perspective, a lot of reasons why people would build more substantive applications, and I think that's what we've been seeing out in the market. Is I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for applications that do have big user bases or more established companies that have been making steps toward crypto, but found kind of some of the throughput issues out there in traditional layer 1 protocols difficult to handle. So I think that ability to handle scale and do so securely, but still maintain a decentralized network is something that's really important. And I think that's a good kind of reason for anybody who wants to hold algos or be part of the network to be involved.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept of, like you're saying, the more stakers that join the network, how it doesn't impact performance, because on a lot of other chains, as you start adding validators on, it can have some impact on performance. So kind of going off of like what the final part you said, some of these other networks are starting to kind of like interoperate with other chains, almost like tap into like these user bases to bring them on. And are you really just kind of start this from the ground up, or is there any initiatives on the interoperability side? Obviously, run Tether as one aspect, but any other efforts on that front?
Definitely have some really interesting efforts. A couple that we hope to be announcing in the next week or two. So everyone stay tuned. I think we've got some exciting stuff planned. But definitely, I would say that one of our core beliefs is that it's a multi-chain. It's a multi-chain world. And I think if you look at how other technology stacks have built up over time, there definitely were different applications, different use cases that different technologies were better suited for. I think definitely Algorand is focused on sort of being layer 1 infrastructure that anybody can use. But I think certainly there's other chains that are going to be specialized for different purposes. And I think that comes down to having the right developer tools and also coordination between chains. So it's something we're working on, and we're going to have more to share on very soon. But definitely we see opportunities to collaborate throughout the ecosystem much more than we're worried about competition out there.
Excellent. Yeah, so even going off of that, Ryan just dropped in, and I think this is a great question. When the announcement that had to do with props token making a move from their own private chain over to Algorand. So just curious about how that came about, and what are the plans for that going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a really exciting example. I think one of the things we've seen pockets of for sure are permissioned applications, or people who have had to create a centralized version of a chain in order to handle their throughput requirements. I think props is a really good example, just so everybody here is aware. They're around, I believe, 3 million users today. It's effectively a loyalty system, enabling many different applications to encourage users to participate in their products, and also help them benefit economically by continued participation in the network. So think about an Airbnb where kind of everyone owns a piece of the company, that sort of idea, or owns a piece of the network. Their growth has been really strong, and I think what they had a lot of interest in was being able to migrate their users into a permissionless setting where they could more easily exchange with different companies and participate in different applications versus just in their own permissioned world. But really didn't see a lot of applications that allowed them to do that. So I had a series of discussions with them, and excited for them to migrate later this year. But we think that that's a great example of an existing app that can come take advantage of Algorand's public network, where in the past they had to kind of manage in a permissioned way.
Yeah, no, I see. You can see this theme of the permission side kind of going over more towards the permissionless as you start seeing benefits on that side. And I think it kind of oh yeah,
I was just going to say, well, one thing I would just add to that discussion is, I think we've seen this before, or these kinds of migrations. And if you look at, go back a decade and look at some of the early cloud deployments, I think there was an instinct early on, both for performance reasons, but also just concern around public network, to deploy applications in a private kind of virtualized setting. And I think especially enterprises gravitated toward that. And then over time, people moved to things like AWS and other kind of public clouds. And I think, I'm hopeful that, what applications like Prop represent is kind of a wave of some of these more meaningful apps starting to migrate to a public network, because that's ultimately the right answer in the long run.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think part of that conversation too is interesting. The new paper that was put out recently about co-chains.
Yep.
And how you can kind of features a little bit of a mix of the both. It's my understanding that there's a scalability component to it, but also the idea that you can have these kind of like private, I guess, side chains or child chains, if you want to.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's the right way to think about it. They're not exactly like, I think, traditional side chains, which is why we call them co-chains.
Co-chains, yeah.
But one of the things that we also think when you're, relatively early in a new technology or kind of a new, wave of tech like we're in now, is that, not everyone who's going to deploy has the regulatory freedom to simply go and launch on a public network. So I think there are definitely reasons why people may need privacy. And I know the Zcash guys were on just before me. I think they obviously have a way of looking at that as well. But so we think the privacy is important. But the second part is, I think if people just aren't comfortable with public networks early on, we don't necessarily need to try to convince them all in one shot that they should be on the public network. They can discover that over time. One of the things we think is important about co-chains is that because every co-chain is mathematically derived from the public mainnet, it always maintains an ability to transact with the public mainnet, and assets can be moved back and forth seamlessly. And what we feel is that that's kind of the right balance, where people can still deploy chains that are either permissioned or public, but then separately don't lose compatibility with the public network, and could later move their assets back onto the public network, or can simply transact there anytime, or with any other co-chain that's in the ecosystem. So, we think that hopefully is a good step forward in terms of sort of meeting people where they are and encouraging them to come and build applications on Algorand and in kind of a blockchain environment in general. And we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah. So running up on time here, but I think that's a great explanation of co-chains right there. I'm going to be keeping an eye on what's going to be coming out next on the interoperability side. And thanks for joining us. It was great to get an update firsthand, and looking forward to hear more.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for joining, everyone. We'll talk to you guys soon.